Hello, my name is Pahaley, and I'm going to talk to you about the pelvis, the bone structure, the muscle, and the volume. So I did this project with acrylic paints, and I did the lower layer, which is the bones, on an illustration board. And then I did the upper two layers, the muscle and volume, on plexiglass, which I ended up using a frame cover, which you can use for picture frames. And because it's see-through, you could layer them on top of each other and see. So I used a very small brush for this. It's a squirrel hair brush, and it's size 2, but the point of the brush is just a couple of hairs, and so it creates this really nice thin line. And I use mostly water and just a little bit of paint. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the bones. So what you see here, this is the ilium, and that is the largest bone in the pelvis, and it's connected to the iliac crest. And right here at the tip of the iliac crest, you see the anterior superior iliac spine. And this is important because the iliac crest attaches to many muscles, the external oblique, the latissimus dorsi, and the iliacus muscle. So I will talk to you about these muscles when we get to the muscle portion of this presentation. So then we have the coccyx, and this is called the tailbone in the vernacular, or in common layman's terms. And this functions as part of the support when you're sitting down, and as you lean backwards, it becomes more and more part of the support. And then this triangular section over here is called the sacrum, and that also provides some support for the spine. Now here we have the pubis, which is the front part of the hip bone, and then we have the ischium, which is the back part of the hip bone. Right here we have pubic symphysis, and the pubic symphysis is a cartilage joint, and it connects the left and right parts of the pubic bone. And its function is to absorb shock during walking. And for females, it allows delivery for the babies. So that's all I'm going to talk about the bones. And then when I did the volume layer, I ended up learning a lot about where the pelvic bone is situated in the grand scheme of the body. So previously I was drawing the pelvic bone very close to the outside contour of the body. And after doing this project, I learned that actually that's incorrect, because there's a lot of insulation that's not part of the bone around the pelvis. And then I moved on to the muscle layer. And I think this was probably the hardest to complete because there's so many muscles, and it was difficult to decide which ones to include and which ones not to include. So I'm going to start telling you a little bit about the muscles. And here's the rectus abdominis, which is part of your abdominal muscles. And these are really important because they not only maintain your posture and support your spine, but they also protect organs, and they help you with bodily functions such as coughing, sneezing, excretion, and vomiting. So that's a fun fact about it. So moving along. So this muscle here is called your iliacus, and it connects again to the iliac crest. And then we have the psoas major. So over here we have the sartorius muscle. And over here we have the gracilis muscle. And the sartorius and gracilis muscles both have the same function. They both run from the hip to the tibia, and they help bring your hip inward, and they help flex your knees. And so moving along here, the tensor fasciae latae, which is a long, thin muscle that also runs from the hip to the tibia, and it stabilizes your hip and knee joints. Then here we have the rectus femoris, and that's one of your 4 quadricep muscles, and it attaches to your kneecap. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I would have done differently. So, given the short amount of time, I wasn't able to complete more than one view of the pelvis, and I thought that took a lot away from my final presentation because I wasn't able to talk about some really important muscles. For example, in the back view, there's the gluteus maximus, and I did try to hint at the gluteus medius here, which ends up pulling your thigh in, so it's important. But your gluteus maximus is arguably even more important because it gives your butt the shape that it does, and it's a shock absorber. So when I used to do gymnastics, I remember my coaches always used to tell us that if you're going to fall, don't stick your hands out because there's no shock absorber on your hands. But they said, let yourself fall on your butt because your butt is so insulated that you probably wouldn't break anything if you just landed on your butt. One of the other muscles I wanted to talk about was the external oblique. And this is your muffin top or your love handle. And the thing about this muscle is that there are a lot of people out there who want to get rid of the muffin top because they think it's a sign of being fat. So they work out that part of their body. And what ends up happening is if you do that, you're just going to make that muscle bigger. It's meant to be there. It's a muscle. And then some technical points. On the pelvis, if I had a chance to redo it, I would definitely exaggerate more the shading near the iliac crest and on the ilium. The ilium goes back, and I feel like you can't really see that in this picture that I've drawn. And so I would have exaggerated the shading here to make that 3D effect. And finally, I think the muscles look a little bit deflated. And so I probably would have made them a little fuller if I had a chance to redo them. But overall, I feel like I've learned a lot about the anatomy of the pelvis. I've learned how to render it more clearly, and I've learned how it's situated in our bodies. It's not right by the surface, but it's more inside. I had a very fun time experimenting with acrylic paints. So thank you for listening to this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned as much as I did. Thank you. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably not.